He was known as the boy who never lost. Every race, every finish line, every cheer from the crowd built his identity. Ethan ran as if the world would stop spinning if he slowed down. To everyone else, he was unstoppable. The golden runner, the town's pride. But what no one saw was the fear behind his stride. He didn't run for victory. He ran to escape failure. Every medal was proof that he still mattered. Then, one cold morning during the biggest race of his life, his leg twisted mid-sprint. The crowd gasped, cameras froze, and Ethan fell hard. The sound of his crash silenced the world that once cheered for him. As pain crawled up his leg, one thought echoed louder than the roar that faded. Who am I if I can't win? The hospital room smelled of medicine and quiet disappointment. Ethan sat by the window, staring at his bandaged leg. The doctors said he would walk again, maybe even run, but not the way he used to. Those words hit harder than the injury itself. The walls around him were filled with medals and posters from his past races, reminders of who he was. His mother tried to lift his spirit, bringing him his favorite food, showing him old videos of his wins, but every replay felt like a cruel echo. His phone buzzed with messages, teammates celebrating new victories, coaches announcing new stars. The world had moved on, leaving him behind. At night, he scrolled through social media, watching highlight reels of runners he once beat. Each clip tightened the knot in his chest. He wanted to be happy for them, but jealousy burned like fire. "I was supposed to be there," he whispered, his voice trembling. Days turned into weeks, and his crutches became his new shadow. He avoided friends, avoided mirrors. Even the sound of running shoes tapping on pavement outside made his stomach twist. Without the track, without the roar of the crowd, Ethan felt invisible. The boy who once ran faster than the wind now couldn't even stand without help. And every time he tried, every time pain forced him back into the chair, that voice inside him whispered again, "You were only special when you were winning." One evening, as Ethan sat lost in thought, his mother quietly placed a folded flyer on his bedside table. "They're holding a community marathon next month," she said softly. "You could help out. Maybe volunteer." Ethan didn't even glance at it. "Mom, I can't even run to the kitchen." "What's the point?" She smiled faintly. "Sometimes purpose isn't in running, it's in showing up." Then she left the room. The flyer stayed there for days, untouched, until one night he finally picked it up. Across the top, bold letters read, "Run for Hope, a charity event for recovery and resilience." Something about that word, resilience, stuck with him. Weeks later, against his own resistance, Ethan limped to the local track to volunteer. The field buzzed with laughter and music. Children chased each other, runners stretched, and the air carried the faint scent of determination. He felt like an outsider looking into a world that no longer belonged to him. As he handed out water bottles to passing runners, his eyes landed on a man jogging slowly in the far lane. He wasn't fast or strong, yet something about him stood out. Steady pace, calm breathing, no rush to finish. When the race ended, the man approached Ethan, sweat glistening under his weathered cap. "You used to run, didn't you?" the man asked. Ethan nodded, surprised. "Yeah, used to." The man smiled knowingly. "Used to? That's a heavy word." He extended a hand. "Name's Cole. I still come here every morning. Not to race, just to move." Ethan forced a polite smile, but curiosity flickered in his chest. "Why bother if you're not competing?" Cole's eyes softened. "Because winning and living aren't the same thing, son. One ends when the race does. The other begins when it's over. Before Ethan could reply, Cole walked away, leaving those words echoing louder than the crowd. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Mr. Cole's words in his head. Winning and living aren't the same thing. He wanted to brush it off, but something deep inside refused to let go. The next morning, out of restlessness more than hope, he found himself back at the track. Mr. Cole was already there, jogging slowly, his rhythm steady and unhurried. Ethan stood at the gate, watching in silence. Every part of him wanted to step forward, but pride pinned his feet. What would people think? The once champion now limping on the sidelines. He turned away, but as he walked off, the sound of Cole's shoes brushing the track followed him like an echo. For the first time, that sound didn't sting. It sounded peaceful. The following days became a battle between his body and his mind. Each time he passed the stadium, his chest tightened with longing and fear. Sometimes he'd stop and just watch from afar. The empty lanes, the stillness, the faint whistle of wind cutting across the track. He realized he didn't miss the victory. He missed the feeling of belonging. One evening, he sat on his porch, staring at his old running shoes. The soles were worn, the laces frayed, but they still held stories of races won, of crowds that once screamed his name. He traced his finger along the scuff marks and whispered, "You and I, we were unstoppable once." A wave of anger hit him. He threw the shoes across the yard, but instead of relief, guilt flooded in. He wanted to hate running for abandoning him, yet all he could feel was emptiness. Later that night, his mother found him sitting in the dark, head in his hands. "You know," she said gently, "the only person waiting for you to forgive yourself is you." Her words cracked something open. For the first time, Ethan wondered if his pain wasn't just in his leg. Maybe it was in how tightly he clung to who he used to be. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the track just as the sky began to lighten. The air was crisp, the kind that carries quiet before the world wakes. Mr. Cole was already there, stretching beside the bleachers. When he saw Ethan, a slow smile formed on his face. "Didn't think you'd come back," he said. Ethan shrugged. "Didn't think I would either." Cole nodded toward the track. "Walk with me." They started slowly, their steps echoing softly on the rubber lanes. For a while, neither spoke. Then Cole said, "You know, when I was your age, I thought if I stopped running, the world would forget me. I pushed so hard I forgot to breathe." He looked at Ethan. "Then, one day, my heart gave out mid-race. Doctor said I'd never run again." Ethan turned, eyes wide. "So what did you do?" Cole smiled faintly. "I learned to move differently. I realized the race isn't against others. It's against the voice that says, 'You're not enough.'" They stopped near the center of the track, where sunlight now spilled over the red lanes. "You don't need to win to matter, kid," Cole said quietly. "You just need to show up, even when it hurts." Ethan felt something loosen inside him, like a knot untying. He looked at the lanes, then back at Cole. "I'm tired of running from who I am," he whispered. Cole nodded. "Good. Then maybe it's time you start walking toward who you could be." Over the next few weeks, Ethan began showing up at the track every morning. At first, he could barely manage a slow walk, but Mr. Cole never pushed. He simply walked beside him, step by step. Some mornings they talked. Other days, they said nothing at all. The silence was different now. It wasn't heavy. It was healing. With each lap, Ethan started noticing things he'd missed before. The rhythm of his breath, the cool wind brushing his face, the sound of birds waking the morning. It wasn't about speed anymore. It was about presence. One morning, Ethan arrived to find the track empty. On the bench where Mr. Cole usually sat was a folded piece of paper and a pair of worn-out running gloves. The note read, "You don't need me anymore, son. The stillness you feared is where your strength lives. Run, not to win, but to remember who you are." Ethan stood there for a long time, the paper trembling in his hands. Then slowly, he slipped on his shoes. His legs still ached, but his heart felt light. He took one cautious step, then another, until he was jogging, then running. Not for applause, not for anyone watching, but for himself. The wind stung his eyes as emotion surged through him. Every step was freedom. Every breath was forgiveness. As he crossed the same stretch where he once fell, tears mixed with sweat. But this time, they didn't taste like failure. They tasted like peace. In that moment, Ethan finally understood what Mr. Cole meant. Stillness wasn't the absence of motion. It was the quiet strength to move forward without needing the world to notice. Months later, the small-town stadium buzzed again. Not with competition, but with community. A new event banner hung across the gates. The Stillness Run, a race without finish lines. Ethan stood near the starting track, greeting people as they arrived. Kids, parents, elders, even those who couldn't run but came to walk or simply cheer. There were no medals this time, no ranks, no pressure, just movement and laughter. He watched as strangers encouraged one another, as people ran at their own pace, as joy filled the air that once echoed with his doubts. Standing by the fence was Mr. Cole, older now, leaning gently on his cane, a proud smile lighting up his face. Ethan walked over, heart full. "You made it," he said. Cole chuckled softly. "Told you I'd see you at the finish line, even if there isn't one." They shared a quiet laugh, both knowing this moment wasn't about victory, but gratitude. As the crowd continued to move, Ethan looked up at the open sky. "You were right," he said. "Stillness doesn't stop you, it saves you." Cole nodded. "And now, it's your turn to pass it on." Ethan smiled, feeling the truth settle deep inside him.